for us to come together. So I just want to kind of recap yesterday's events and give you all some updated information on this case. So again, the initial homicide happened at 11 a.m. yesterday on Hialeah Street. The victim is 38-year-old Nathacha Augustin, who happened to be in a car with a friend when she was shot by the suspect. Homicide detectives responded to the scene at 11 a.m., collected evidence, talked to witnesses, did interviews. They quickly identified Keith Moses as the suspect in that case. So they had cleared the scene. 5 hours later, right after 4 o'clock, 911 calls started coming in from that earlier homicide scene about the shooting that involved the two Spectrum News 13 journalists, reporter Dylan Lyons and videographer Jesse Walden. They were both transported to the hospital, and as you know, Dylan Lyons succumbed to his injuries. Jesse Walden remains in the hospital, but he is talking to our detectives and providing information. At the same time as that call, we received another 911 call about 2 more people shot on Harrington Street. The suspect had gone to a house on Harrington Street, entered the home for unknown reasons, and shot a mother and her 9-year-old daughter. So we are not naming the women at this time. They were transported to the hospital where, unfortunately and tragically, 9-year-old Tiana Major died from her injuries. Very quickly after the shooting, our deputies had received the information from witnesses about what the suspect was wearing. We located Mr. Moses and challenged him. He was uncooperative, but the deputies were able to secure him at the scene. We recovered a Glock 40, a semi-automatic handgun from inside of his pants. That gun was still hot to the touch, meaning it had just been fired, and there were no more rounds left in the weapon. So numerous witnesses were located, interviewed. Several of them positively identified Keith Moses as the shooter in those cases. We also have video evidence of him at the scene at the time of the shootings. So Moses was taken to the hospital claiming that he was injured and could not breathe. Once at the hospital, he did fight with hospital staff, and our deputies had to restrain him once again. We transported him to the Orange County Sheriff's Office to try and conduct an interview. Moses pretended to be asleep and did not speak with our detectives, but at one point he began physically resisting our detectives and again had to be subdued there at the Sheriff's Office. So he is currently in Orange County Jail. He's charged with first-degree murder of Miss Augustine. And so there are additional charges to file. I am 100% confident that we will charge him with homicide in the killing of Dylan Lyons and also of the 9-year-old girl, Tiana Major, and numerous other charges. We're not looking for anyone else. He's our guy. He's the suspect. Obviously, we're still going to do ballistics testing on the firearm, but our detectives believe that was the firearm used in this case. So again, he does have a criminal history, many of the arrests stemming from when he was a juvenile, including possession of firearm by a minor and robbery with a deadly weapon. I also want to acknowledge the brave WFTV news crew who was there, witnessed the shooting, and then rendered aid to the journalists until our deputies arrived. And again, I just want to offer my condolences to the victims, the families, our media partners who we work so closely with. And we also will be releasing body cam footage of the arrest and takedown later today. And I'll come back up for questions when needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. At this time, we will have State Attorney Monique Worrell. She will come at this time.
Thank you, Bishop McCray. Good afternoon, everyone. I stand with the community in deep sorrow in this unimaginable tragedy another senseless act of gun violence that has plagued our community. Gun violence is a national problem. It is not unique to the Central Florida area, but unfortunately, we have seen our share of gun violence here in this community. I want to extend my deepest sympathies and sincere condolences to the families of the individuals who lost their lives yesterday as a result of this senseless tragedy. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims' families and the surviving victims as we work together with the community to get past this horrific event. Since last night, my office has received several inquiries regarding the individual who is charged with these offenses. I want to respond to that now because there has been a lot of conversation about, well, why was he on the street? So I'll start by saying that this individual's only adult offense was a possession of marijuana, 4.6 grams of marijuana, that my office did not charge because when you have a quantity that low, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement does not test the substance, and that means the state attorney's office cannot prove the case. So there was one adult case of 4.6 grams of marijuana that my office determined was not suitable for prosecution based on our inability to prove the nature of the substance. I'll go further to say that Florida law prohibits me from discussing the details of any juvenile disposition. So I am unable to discuss with you or confirm or deny the existence of any juvenile dispositions that happened regarding this individual. But I will say that juvenile dispositions are not qualified as convictions. So when we say an individual has a certain amount of juvenile arrests with no convictions, that statement is out of context because there is nowhere in the state of Florida when a child is arrested that the result of that arrest is a conviction. I also want to say that in this legislative session, I have proposed to our legislature that they change the rules regarding juvenile justice to extend the period of time that children can be held in juvenile programs. Under the current state of the law, jurisdiction is lost to the Department of Juvenile Justice when a child is sentenced. That means the court nor the state attorney's office has a say in what ultimately is the program or the length of time that a child is kept in a program. I have proposed to the legislature that jurisdiction remain with the court and that we extend the time that children can be placed in programs when they commit violent offenses, as well as how long we can have jurisdiction over a child that has committed a violent offense. My office has also last year implemented a gun violence prevention task force where we meet bi-weekly with our law enforcement partners to identify the most violent individuals in our community so that we can work collaboratively to build strong cases against them. On March 20th, my office will be hosting a gun violence prevention summit in conjunction with our law enforcement and community partners to address this very issue. Finally, I want to say that by the time this situation reaches the state attorney's office, it is too late. The state attorney's office can only respond to hold violent offenders accountable, which we do. But as a community, we must stand and work together to prevent these horrific occurrences from taking place in advance. Again, my condolences to the Central Florida community at large, and to the friends, family, and loved ones of the individuals who are directly impacted by this terrible tragedy. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to prepare ourselves for our questions. I'm going to ask if our sheriff and our mayor would like to come back up, and we're going to give open room for media to ask questions to our sheriff, our mayor, also a state attorney. If you would like to come back up as well, you're welcome to join as well with us.
Dave McDaniel, West TV. Sheriff, if I could ask you a question really quickly. We're hearing from a lot of folks who live in the Pine Hills community, and unfortunately a lot of what we see, over the years, over the decades, have occurred in this community. Are they safe, and what is their role in making sure their community is safe?
So Orange County is a safe community. We have a very small percentage of people who are committing violence in our community. This happened to be a random act of violence that we're still trying to figure out why this happened and why these folks were targeted. So what I say to all our community members is there cannot be a law enforcement officer on every single street, on every single corner. That's where we heavily rely on our community to notify us anytime they see suspicious activity. And the Pine Hills community does a great job of that. Many of the cases that we arrest for came directly from citizens of that community who are fed up with the very small percentage of people who are terrorizing that community and committing crimes in that community.
Sheriff, Matt Trezza, Fox 35 News. What can you tell us at this point about the gun? How did Moses get it?
All right, so we're still trying to track down how he obtained the firearm. So we don't know at this point where he got that firearm from.
Hi, I'm Abigail Geiger with the New York Times. We're wondering about the connection between the suspect and the victims. Do you have any more information?
So in the first homicide, the suspect was picked up by his cousin who was driving the vehicle, and the victim in that vehicle was related, friends, acquaintances with the cousin. So we're not sure if there was a direct relation to that victim by the suspect, but he knew the cousin who was driving the vehicle and ultimately gave us information on that homicide.
Good morning, Emilio Ramos with Telemundo. It's kind of a two-part question. This was only like a 40-minute meeting after what happened yesterday, sadly. And so first, are the faith leaders satisfied with the conversation? And what specifically did on the mayor's side of the meeting, what did they put on the table that is going to be action taken right away? Because yes, that task force was created back in 2020. Was it successful? What's going to be changed specifically, the points that are going to be addressed?
From the standpoint of the faith leaders, I would say that we are satisfied that we are starting a conversation again. And today is our first step. It's definitely not our last step.
Just to follow up regarding the Citizen Safety Task Force, we reported out several times over the couple of years since it was constituted. The most recent report was provided to the Board of County Commission in December of 2022, so just a couple of months ago. The implementation of the recommendations in some regard required the allocation of funding. We have been very proactive. The dollars have been put in place to work with community-based organizations, and there were certain metrics associated with those agreements, and so it's a work in progress, in other words. But this gives us the opportunity to do some follow-up, to go back and make certain that those recommendations that were made by our citizens are still relevant today. And again, if there's any opportunity to amend, to bring additional resources to address the current state of affairs within our community, we're willing to do that. So, work in progress. Thank you.
Jeff Beal with WFTV had a question for the sheriff. We were hearing that perhaps this gentleman, the suspect in the case, was involved in gangs. Can you clarify what, if any, knowledge you have about his gang activity? And then we also know that gangs have been a problem in recent years that the mayor kind of mentioned earlier. Can you tell us what you guys are doing to get a handle on the gang problem and what else you think needs to be done?
He is a known gang member. This was not gang related. I will tell you that our gang unit, our tactical units, our community-oriented policing units work very, very hard to combat some of the gang violence that we have in our community. We have taken literally thousands of guns off the streets of Orange County. We've made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of arrests of gang members with guns committing crimes in our community.
Yeah, this is Melissa Thomas with Florida National News. My question is in regards to the Citizens Review. I know you're saying it's a work in progress. Are there some common pain points that you've noticed from 2020 leading up to the conversation that you guys have had today?
What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Have you noticed some common pain points between the information you gathered from 2020 and what you've heard during the conversation today?
One of the key areas that was discussed was having authentic, credible messengers involved in the process of intervening early and providing mentorship to youth. That program is in place. We have trained some community advocates and community-based organizations in that methodology. And so, again, they are collecting data that will ultimately be made available. In terms of crime, ultimately the goal of the Citizen Safety Task Force was to get us to the point where we would see a reduction in violent crime and overall crime within our community. And I would leave it up to the sheriff to talk about 2022, 2021 in terms of any crime data and how that relates in terms of violent crime. I'll leave it up to them to address those issues.
Yeah, so as far as crime in Orange County, last year we did see an increase, but that was the numbers are kind of faulty because they were compared to the COVID years. So if you look back before COVID to now, we have a decrease in crime. And if you look back 5 years, we have a significant decrease in crime in Orange County. So there's less crime happening in Orange County than happened 5 years ago, despite the growth of Orange County.
Hi, Sabrina Majori with WFTV. Reading the initial arrest report from the first shooting, it seems that the people he was with at the time indicated they had concerns that for his mental well-being. Is there any indication that this is at all related to mental health or that he may have been experiencing some crisis which led to this?
Yeah, so in the initial arrest affidavit, he said he was feeling down. When deputies did take him down, they thought he might be under the influence of some type of drug, but none of that has been confirmed. They said his eyes were dilated, and just you'll see the body cam video later, the way he was acting. But I will say that does not excuse the killing of members of our community.
Nick with Channel 9 as well. This is a question for Prosecutor Worrell. Can you speak to the flaws in the current system with the risk assessment forms that are used and how they might pertain to gang activity in our youth community and how your proposals would address those flaws?
So I can't speak to the flaws with regards to risk assessment, and I can tell you that the proposals that I've made don't address risk assessment at all. The proposals that I've made address what is a problem that predates me, but has long since been identified as a problem with our juvenile justice system, is that our system was not designed to deal with children being the perpetrators of violent crime. So it is based solely on rehabilitation. And while I believe that rehabilitation is a goal for our children, when you have children who commit violent crime, we have to put programs in place that are going to reduce the likelihood of recidivism. And currently, our system isn't geared towards that. Currently, for our max risk programs, you're looking at a term of 18 to 36 months in a max risk program. That is the worst possible punishment in our juvenile system. But that doesn't match individuals who are involved in gun violence. So we need to do something to change that. On the other hand, we have the adult system that is also not adequately equipped to deal with children. We're all familiar with cases in our community involving 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and 13-year-olds who are charged with violent crimes. So the adult system is not the answer to that. The answer is that we have to work to change the jurisdiction of our juvenile system so that we can extend the time and the purpose and increase the intensity of the programming so that we can truly make a difference in the lives of these young people.
So first, condolences for your colleague. So again, the initial homicide was at 11 o'clock. It takes time to interview witnesses, collect evidence, look for video. So detectives were well on their way to identifying him, and it was literally 5 hours later he committed those next shootings. So certainly, if we had probable cause at that time, we would have been looking for him at that time. So, and again, this is just 5 hours later.
Lauren Cervantes, Channel 6, Sheriff Mina. How do residents in the area, the community, know a scene is secure after a shooting has happened there? Is there some type of messaging to alert them, that investigators are still working to find someone, stay in your home? How do they know?
So anytime we have criminal activity or a crime scene in a neighborhood, you'll see law enforcement there. And of course, especially in a case like this where everything was really contained into a car for our homicide detectives, that does make it easier because we're able to tow the car to a secure facility. The vehicle is processed at a secure facility. Of course, we check the scene, we check video. So we're out there for a little while. This happened at 11 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's not like we had to wake people up at 3 o'clock in the morning, homicide detectives, crime scene folks. So everyone was there very quickly. They were able to gather what they need, collect evidence, talk to witnesses, and review video within those 5 hours. So I would say to our residents that if they ever have any question about whether a scene is clear or not, they should definitely contact the sheriff's office, and certainly we will respond like we always do. But in this case, that scene was cleared, and there was no more crime scene, and we finished what we had to do at that scene, and in an attempt to further identify that suspect, make sure we had the proper charges against him, and then arrest him.
Hey, Jeff with WFTV again. Sabrina touched on this a little bit earlier about his particular mental health, and we may not know what was going on with him, but it seems like in a lot of these shootings, a lot of the violence, we do hear about mental health being a problem. How big of a problem is that as far as you guys are seeing, and what are some solutions you think could be done better to deal with that?
Well, mental health is a huge issue, not only here, but across the nation. That's one of the reasons we developed our behavioral response unit. So in cases where we know people are in crisis, our deputies respond with a trained clinician to those cases, and we respond to close to 4,000 calls for service, and not one arrest has been made. So the goal of those units is to get the help, get people the help they need. But there's all kinds of people in our country, in our communities, who have mental health issues. I have family members who have mental health issues, but that doesn't mean you go out and you start randomly shooting people. I think we need to separate that a little bit.
Hello, my name is Luana Gelser. I am with 32805 Orlando News. But today I want to commend you for having this meeting. Unfortunately, I got to share some statistical information. 10% of our people are in church, 90% is not. So the time of this meeting, despite your efforts to say what is going on in the community. We are leaving out 90% of our individuals. So the concerns that I've received and the questions is grief counseling for the schools, especially the school that the young lady attended. Has that been done? Is there any help we can provide the families, especially of the young lady, her mother, as far as planning? Is there any monetary help or anything we can do? We're all concerned about mental health concerns and uniting our community. But the question is, we need to have everybody at the table and not a select individuals at the table. And so we're concerned about mental health. Will that be something you take up? The next meeting is 5:30 next Thursday. Is there a possibility, Bishop, to have something sooner? Because when you say unity and you push it back so far, the community is very concerned. And remember, I'm not speaking for you. My mom was an ordained minister. I'm speaking for the 90% of the people who are not here that do not patronize, unfortunately, the faith beliefs. So is there anybody that can give that information to the community about the grief counseling, another meeting, and including everybody and not waiting to 5:30 next Thursday? And we're very concerned about will we input any mental health counseling in this, because some of us have provided information that can help us with this. So reaching out across the aisle, the olive branch is there, but the community is very concerned that their voices are not being heard and they're not at the table. Thank you.
So before the bishop starts, I'll kind of answer some of those questions. So we've been in contact with Orange County Public Schools. Orange County Public Schools will be providing grief counseling to the school where the young girl attended. As far as services for victims' families, we do that in all our homicide cases. We provide victim advocates, and of course we have great services here in Central Florida through the Victim Service Center as well. And there's also, you mentioned monetary, there's also monetary relief that could come from the Attorney General's office from the state of Florida.
And yes, also to address your question about the upcoming meetings, we're planning for a quicker prayer visual to take place. However, that meeting that's going to happen is going to be the Pine Hills Association. They're coming together, and we're going to collaborate with them on that for that effort to go forward. We are definitely open, and that's kind of what we're starting today. Again, as I said in my comments, this is the opening, the beginning of it. It's not the conclusion of it. We really pulled things together kind of late last night. And so today is a result of what you've seen from just that quick effort. But all hearts and minds are needed, and we welcome any kind of conversations as well.
This is to follow up on the mental health piece. You may recall that perhaps a year and a half or so ago, we impaneled a critical review of the delivery of services for mental health within our community, and we identified a $49 million gap at that time. What we have done at Orange County within the current fiscal year that started October 1, we allocated an additional $10 million to address the mental health issues within our community. In addition to that, we are providing funding to the Sheriff's Office for the behavioral response unit, the crisis response unit that the Sheriff just talked about. We will look for other opportunities to engage with those who provide mental health services within our community to make certain that we're addressing the appropriate demographics. And by the way, our community was a recipient of HUD funding for mental health services for youth within our community, and all of that is at play. As we reconvene the Citizen Safety Task Force, it gives us the opportunity to once again take a look at how we're allocating those dollars to make sure that it is being spent in the most beneficial way to our community. I think I'm What I can promise you is that it will be representative of the broad community that we serve, and so you'll hear more about that in the very near future. I think we have time for one additional question at this time, and then we'll wrap up. There may be individuals who are here who may be available for the one-on-ones, but I think the mic is over here with Mr. Hudak.
Well, I appreciate everything, Dave.
Yes.
Thank you, first of all, for having availability for all of you. This is actually for Sheriff Mina, if I can. You said during your opening remarks, talked about random. Was it random? Was there a motive? Why did you return? Have you figured that out? And anything else, any other details you can give us about the thought process there?
Yes, all great questions. Because Moses is not speaking to us, we're unable to determine a motive at this time. It is unclear why he shot the first victim. It's unclear why he targeted those folks in the news media, and it's unclear why he shot a 9-year-old and her mother, all in that same area. I will tell you that the news vehicle, I saw it, didn't have any really markings that stood out, and I know that the suspect had passed by another news vehicle as well. So, yeah, it's one of the questions that we would really like to answer for our community. You know, why did he do this? Why did he shoot those people? You know, I mentioned that his firearm was empty, and thankfully it was, because I'm not sure if he would have kept shooting people in that community. And I'm very, very thankful for the witnesses who came forward real quickly, provided information to us, because we quickly apprehended him, so he couldn't harm anyone else again. But as soon as we find out, if we find out, what the motive was, like I said, he's not talking to us, we will definitely let the community know. And like I said, we're going to release body cam footage of the apprehension later today.
Good afternoon. This is Laura Molina with Univision Orlando. There was a first victim identified as Red Nelson, but now she was identified as Natasha Agustin. Can you clarify who this Red Nelson person is?
Yeah, so I didn't recognize the first name you said. So the victim who was shot in the very beginning was a 38-year-old Natasha Augustine.
Thank you.
That's correct. We did get cooperation from the driver of that vehicle, who turned out to be his cousin.
Okay, let me just say, we're going to conclude this portion of it today. Let me just say thank you to Bishop Derek McCrae and the Experienced Christian Center and the African American Council of Christian Clergy for being here to host this event. We will transition into one-on-ones for those who want to participate in that. All of us offer condolences to the families and to our entire community that has been impacted by the events within the last 24 hours or so. But the goal here is to translate any anger, if there is any, or any concern into action afterwards that will propel us to hopefully come up with some meaningful solutions to reducing gun violence and violent crime within our community. That takes all of us working together. So thank you all for being here today, and we'll transition to the one-on-ones.